In a recent TikTok video, Curtis Wray says you should never have your emergency fund inside a traditional savings account, but you should instead use your IUL as your emergency fund. Is he right? That's what I'll be talking about in today's video. Okay, let's begin by taking a look at Curtis's video.
That's why you should never have your money inside of a bank account as an emergency fund. As an example, you have $40,000 in a bank, making around 0.01% interest. After 30 years, it'll be worth around $41,270. But what did it do for your retirement? Absolutely nothing. Now let's do it my way, the compound way. Instead, let's get your $40,000 into a secure compound interest account that can be used as your emergency fund. Getting a projected 10% rate of return in the same 30 years, it could have a projected account value of $750,000. But more importantly, a tax-free annual income of up to $75,000 per year every single year for the rest of your life. That's a $2.2 million lost compound interest opportunity because you took some bad advice.
Okay, in this video, I won't be critiquing Curtis's overall MPI strategy where you are encouraged to take loans from your IUL to pay future premiums in order to experience a positive arbitrage that, in theory, would dramatically compound your savings over time. Instead, I'm going to be focusing on his specific advice to utilize your IUL as your emergency fund. Now, as you probably know by now, I'm a huge fan of Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, Roth conversions, taking money out of your IRAs up to the standard deduction so those distributions can be tax-free, and yes, when structured properly, indexed universal life. As it happens, I'm also a huge fan of emergency funds. I think you should have 6 months worth of basic living expenses inside an account that's safe and that can easily be accessed without taxes, fees, or penalties. Now, Curtis says that you shouldn't expect more than 1% growth in your savings account. This ignores the fact that in most states you can get a high yield savings account with growth rates as high as 5%. So I think he intentionally suppresses this growth rate to help make his case. Next, he's using a 10% return on the IUL projection. That would be something on the order of 11% gross of fees over that 30-year time frame. In my estimation, this rate of return is way too aggressive. I think a much more realistic growth rate assumption is between 5 and 7% net of fees over that time frame. Still more than what you'd be getting in a high yield savings account and tax-free, mind you, but a far cry from 10% net over time. But that isn't even my biggest problem with this comparison. The whole idea behind an emergency fund is that you are likely to use it. Curtis's comparison presupposes that you leave $40,000 in either your IUL or your savings account and you never ever tap into it. In other words, the whole comparison rides on the idea that your emergency fund goes unused for your entire accumulation phase. Now ask yourself the question, how many emergencies, or what I refer to as shock expenses, have you had over the last 30 years where you had to dip into savings, or maybe you had to use your credit card or take a loan from your 401k? The truth is most Americans have shock expenses every few years or so. So they dip into their emergency savings if they have them and then build that fund back up over time. Emergency funds don't typically sit idle for 30 years. That's just not the nature of the real world. TikTok videos notwithstanding. The minute you have your very first emergency, maybe your basement floods, you have an unexpected health emergency, you lose your job, or you have to repair the roof, then Curtis's entire comparison falls apart. Because the minute you access your emergency fund, then you no longer have the luxury of growing and compounding that money at 10% over the next 30 years. Now, if you use a high yield savings account as your emergency fund, your money is growing safely and productively, you're staying ahead of inflation, and you have instant access. This is precisely what you should be looking for in an emergency fund. If you use your IUL as an emergency fund, conversely, you'd be required to call the company, take a loan, and then pay that loan back at some point in time. Well, if you're having an emergency, the last thing on your mind is paying back a loan on your IUL. Now, I know some of the MPI advocates will say that you don't have to pay that money back because they're presupposing a massive arbitrage on that loan. You saw on the graphic that Curtis is projecting a 6.28% rate of return with a 4% loan charge. That means that he's predicting that if you did take a loan to pay for that emergency, you would pay 4% on the loan and be credited 6.28% back by the company. That means the company would literally be paying you 2.28% to take that loan. Now, I gotta throw out one huge caveat when it comes to what Curtis is projecting here. He isn't pulling the IUL numbers from an actual life insurance company illustration. He's pulling them from an Excel spreadsheet of his own making. The reason he's using an Excel spreadsheet and a whiteboard for that matter is because it's actually illegal to show an arbitrage of greater than 0.5% when illustrating an IUL loan. So the arbitrage he's showing here is 4 times higher than what you're actually allowed to show by law. That's why you never see Curtis Wray doing a screenshot of an actual life insurance illustration. We instead get facile comparisons on the whiteboard. Lastly, the IUL isn't a great emergency fund because it typically has surrender charges for the first 10 to 15 years. That means that if you're just starting out in life and are using the IUL as double duty, retirement and emergencies, it may be some time before you have full access to your money. I generally don't recommend you touch your IUL for at least 10 to 15 years so that you can allow your cash value to marinate and build a head of steam. If you're constantly taking loans from your IUL to pay for emergencies, you'll never see the types of results Curtis is illustrating on his whiteboard. Folks, a lot of people like to talk about the IUL as a one-size-fits-all Swiss Army knife investment. It can replace your Roth IRA, your Roth 401k, and your emergency fund. I think this is a mistake. The IUL can, in fact, do some things that other investments can't do. For example, it works as an outstanding bond alternative. It can function as an excellent volatility shield in retirement, where you can nearly double your withdrawal rate by using your life insurance cash value to pay for your living expenses in the years following a down year in the market. And lastly, it provides a death benefit that you can receive in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. In short, the IUL does have a variety of compelling features that make it a formidable tax-free alternative in retirement. But one thing it is not is an emergency fund. I understand the Swiss Army knife analogy. I just don't happen to think it's a good one. The IUL works best as a complement to 4 or 5 other streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which contribute to you being in the 0% tax bracket in retirement, and it almost certainly is not an emergency fund. Folks, in the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 100,000 Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you want to learn more about how to adopt a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to davemcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn more about how to become a certified Power of Zero advisor, head on over to powerzero.com and opt into my free 3-part video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.